Today, we are going to be exploring queerness and challenging the status quo. I found this quote from Bell Hooks, which I love. I thought this was just such a great way to explain it sort of conceptually. The essence of queer from Bell Hooks.
As the essence of queer, I think of Tim Dean's work on being queer, and queer not as being about who you're having sex with. That can be a dimension of it, but queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live.
So,
I like that. I really do.
Yeah, I do too, because I think as we evolve as humans and as, we hopefully, is that like a new thing? It's to hope for a more open society, for a more pluralistic society. That the definition of what it means to be queer is just going to be ever evolving. Welcome to Bookwise from bookclub.com. I am your host, Britt Brewer, and I'm joined today by a very, very special guest. Super excited to talk to him. He's going to be co-hosting with me, John-Paul Kunrunmi, because I told him I wasn't going to butcher it. Okay, will you actually say your last name so that my dumb American mouth isn't butchering your beautiful last name again?
Thank you. Yes, so full name is John-Paul Kunrunmi. But yeah, John-Paul is cool, it's sweet. From London. Yeah, all that good stuff. Far away.
Far away. John-Paul, you're also you're an avid reader, you're a book influencer. What is your handle on TikTok?
So on TikTok, you can find me at the @sign JPReads6.
JPReads6. You cover a lot of queer authors and queer literature on your channel.
That's my thing. Yeah. So mainly started the channel because being both black and queer, I thought there's not that much out there that I can see in one centralized place. So I thought let's just mash the two. And yeah, JP Reads is just a place where we can find a lot of black authors and black queer authors and black queer stories as well.
Amazing. And one more thing is I do have to call out, a lot of times we here on Bookwise talk about more sort of like things in the realm of business nonfiction, leadership development. So I wanted to call it out because as we hopefully become a more progressive society, as will our like workspaces and professional spaces. So I think this is a super worthwhile conversation. JP, kick us off with your first pick.
So, my first pick is Revolutionary Acts by Jason Okundaye.
Okay.
And it is a book that came out recently. And it's basically about black queer, I want to call them icons, black queer icons, male, because the book talks about love and brotherhood in black gay Britain, because history in general, black history in general, is poorly archived here in the UK. And a lot of the things and the changes that were made and the movements that were created, just long forgotten. And that's just normal black, I guess, civil rights movements. When it comes to black queer, specifically black gay movements, nothing. So what, Jason, fantastic guy, love him. He basically, went to interview five people who are still alive, still breathing, still moving and operating. These people contributed to the movements, the queer movements back when it happened, I think probably maybe 50, 60 years ago. And he basically collated everything into a nice book in a form of archiving it essentially in the history and the beautiful things that they've done, and called it Love and Brotherhood in Black Gay Britain. And yeah, it just, for me, especially as a black queer guy, it really helped me see that there were people who have done so much to really make sure that I can basically love who I want to love, with, I guess, less repercussions. But it's better than what it was before, and that counts for something. And it also makes it worth fighting for yourself because you realize that people have done a lot for it.
Oh my gosh, I would love to read that. it's wild to think that in the 1950s or up until the 1950s, queerness, homosexuality, whatever you want to call it, gayness was outlawed. Like you could get
Mm-hmm.
arrested, and people
Mm-hmm.
were. So my official next pick is "Punch Me Up to the Gods" by Brian Broome. It came out a couple years ago. We did an interview series with him here at Book Club.
Even in rehab, you can't escape racism. Even in rehab, you can't escape homophobia. What are you hiding? What aren't you telling me? Go deeper.
It is a gorgeous memoir about being a Black queer man in America, and the way that the chapters are organized. He bases them on a Gwendolyn Brooks poem called "We Real Cool." Gwendolyn Brooks is an incredible poet, and I found a collection of her work in high school, and I've been obsessed ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a story of him coming to grips with his identity as a Black queer man, but also it deals with addiction. And it's amazing to see someone discover themselves through writing a book, if that makes sense. It's like the act of writing was an act of self-discovery and self-acceptance. And yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Punch Me Up to the Gods, Brian Broome.
Thank you. Does it take you on a journey, like as you're reading it? Did you feel like you were kind of like on that wave with him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those
yes.
are the best reads. Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of felt like someone's diary was unfolding, but a diary that invites you in, you know what I mean? Not sort of like a solipsistic navel gazing sort of journey. It was, I felt such deep empathy where I felt like I was in it with him, which is always the mark of like a really exceptional book.
Oh, that is very precious. So, pick number 2 for me is called The Sex Lives of African Women by Nana Darkoa Sekyiamah. This book, I want to say firstly, is aimed at African women, first off, but I was told to read it because it changed. The person who recommended it on TikTok was like, this book changed my life. And I was like, oh, okay. People say that about a lot of things. I was like, okay, let's just try. I read this, and firstly, Black women and African women in general, the culture that has, I guess, been, I'm going to say, poured into Africa, and I guess in terms of things like colonization, is usually either been Christianity or Islam. And some of them can be very restrictive on the way that women can express themselves. Some would think, and this is a sentiment that the author does express and feel. And what she did was she went around and she interviewed women in Africa about their sex lives, straight women, queer women, and hearing their stories about liberation, how they came to become comfortable in expressing themselves and loving themselves and their sexuality. This book changed my life. As someone who has come from an West African Christian household, and then on top of that, queer, is like the thought of loving myself and like what that actually means is so hard to jump over so many hurdles and through so many hoops just to be okay with doing that without feeling any guilt or any pressure. And reading this made me realize that, number one, I am not the only one, and number two, like, these women actually gave like not just tips, but like their stories were like instructions, like just feel and just do, and sometimes you just have to like jump off the cliff and see what happens, see how you feel. And there's like, I think I want to say 15 chapters with 15 women, and one of my favorite quotes that I'm thinking of getting tattooed somewhere comes from this book, and it's that, to paraphrase it because it's quite long, but the woman that she interviews says that queerness is an openness that's expansive. And when you mentioned before about how you want, obviously the world is getting more progressive and how queerness is going to continue to evolve, I thought of the same quote, and I was like, queerness is an openness that's expansive. It's open to loving people and accepting people how they are, and it will also expand because the definitions is just going to become endless. And I think that quote came smack bang in the middle. So everything that I'd read before that and after that was just illuminating. I was like, this book is great, a straight 10 out of 10. And I would love to share, I guess, some of her stuff. So I think producer Mike does have a little clip we haven't seen, so we're going to be live reacting.
I've been writing about sex since 2009. I'm not tired of writing about sex. There's so much more I want to write about sex. I think it's super important. Like you mentioned, I think it's political. If it wasn't political, we wouldn't have states trying to legislate who we can love and how we can love.
Yeah.
I feel like if we can free ourselves in our personal lives, we can free ourselves in our public lives and in every area of life, you know. And I think sex is interconnected to all the aspects, you know, of our lives.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it's so true. How can it not be? It already is politicized. It's heavily politicized. It's heavily, I mean, we're just talking about how it was illegal. But, you know, love, this is going to be really corny, but love is a political act, right? Okay, I'm definitely going to check that book out. So my next pick is another memoir. It's called In the Shadow of the Mountain. It's by Sylvia Vasquez Lovato. So for her story is that she was very much in the corporate world, but she also is incredibly accomplished. She was the first openly gay woman to complete the 7 summits, which is, you know, I don't know all of them except I know Everest, but I think maybe Denali is one of them. I don't know. But yeah, she's an incredible climber. But the book actually jumps back and forth between her summiting and then telling the story of her life, which involved trauma, shame, addiction, coming to grips with sexuality, coming to grips with abuse that had happened to her as a child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, you know, what's interesting, I'm just realizing that this book and Brian Broome's book, they're both in recovery. They're both former addicts. And so much of their honesty and, you know, authentic discovery is that they were able to reckon with their own addiction, you know, and addiction is so much about shame, and it's so much about, you know, you're as sick as your secrets. But also, you know, to what you were talking about, this living in the present, and so much of recovery is about taking it day to day and being present and being okay with who you are and not feeling shame.
Something that kind of popped into mind, because I know we're going to mention my career as a pharmacist, my short stint. One of the things that I was very, very interested in was the language used to describe people in recovery from addiction. Because the language used to be so abrasive. And I used to struggle to use it because it obviously, like, the biochemistry of addiction isn't that it's voluntary, and people still don't understand it to today. Like, it's a very, like, your body changes, like the chemistry changes, your body responds like in a different way to someone who isn't dependent on it. And like, I prefer to say dependent as opposed to addict, because your body is dependent on it, and I think that change in language is very important and should be noted.
I love it, and it definitely speaks to a lot of the themes of this book, because you know, addict, and I don't know if I'm just imbuing it with this meaning, but to me it does feel stigmatized, which society has stigmatized it, but it also feels like someone alone in their shame, white knuckling the experience, and dependency feels like a collective problem, right?
Yeah.
I believe we have come to the 5th pick, which is our, speaking of collectivism, this is our Marxist kibbutz shared pick. And I'm going to let you do the honors, John-Paul. What is it?
Drum roll, even as it's no drum roll. It is Giovanni's Room by the amazing, the one and only James Baldwin. What a book. What a book. What a book. How are you feeling about it, Britt?
This is maybe, if not my favorite, one of my all-time favorite books. It was very instrumental as a young gay reading this book and feeling like you are, I don't want to age myself, but things were not quite as open when I was feeling all my young gay feelings. And, you know, it's such a heart-rending, heartbreaking metaphor for what it felt like to be in this room of your feelings and to feel like you kind of, you know, you had to hide your love away, you know, and And just this, how like, these experiences will happen within the confines of a room. But when James Baldwin was writing it, I mean, he lived in Paris for a time, so that was like slightly more open than America. But like for the most part, it was a criminal act, and you had to keep it in the shadows and keep it in a room. And how if you keep it hidden away, it can't live, it can't thrive.
Wow. I think I'm just thinking of like when I first read it, because I know how was I feeling. I know how one of the first things I noted was how David obviously had a fiance, and he had found Giovanni and found something in him. And again, I didn't really get why the book was called Giovanni's Room until the end. But I think I really appreciated how James had gone about discussing, I guess, the act of being closeted in a very nuanced and understanding way, I would say, because I feel like the conversation in general can be had very disingenuously. People often, in my opinion, fail to remember how it feels and why closeted behavior occurs. And I feel like, obviously, in that time, especially where it is, outlawed, punishable, it's a crime. I think those feelings although like things have changed a bit, I feel like it made me think like right now, like some people actually like genuinely do not have a choice, and they have to act as if everything is okay.
It's so true. Producer Mike has found an incredible video of James Baldwin in the 1980s. An interviewer asked him about love and about Giovanni's Room, and he gives a very gorgeous, eloquent answer. So here we go.
Nobody, no man and no woman, is precisely what they think they are. Love is where you find it, and you don't know where it will carry you. And it is a terrifying thing. Love, it is the only human possibility, but it's terrifying. And a man can fall in love with a man, a woman can fall in love with a woman. There's nothing anybody can do about it. It's not in the province of the law. There's nothing you do with the church. And if you lie about that, you lie about everything. And no one has a right to try to tell another human being whom he or she can or should love.
Oh,
I am shook.
Oh, James. Oh, James, the man that you are. Wow.
That was, I truly am like gobsmacked. That was incredible. Just, can you imagine having a mind like that and just being able to just off the top of your mind, just give this mic drop, eloquent way of describing queerness.
Yeah. Wow. What a mind.
So to summarize our books on the revolutionary act of queerness and bucking the status quo, JP, will you list your 2 books that you talked about today?
Yep. So number 1 was Revolutionary Acts, Love and Brotherhood in Black Gay Britain by Jason Okundaye. And number 2 was The Sex Lives of African Women by Nana Darkoa Sekyiamah.
Both of those sound so amazing, and I've already noted they're on my list with a bullet. So mine were Punch Me Up to the Gods by Brian Broome and In the Shadow of the Mountain by Sylvia Vasquez Lavado. And our collective pick
was the amazing Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Pick it up.
I am Britt Brewer. I have been joined by the amazing John-Paul. You can find him on TikTok at JPReads6 and also on Instagram as same handle.
Yes, same handle.
Thank you so much. John-Paul, do you have any parting thoughts, words, anything, any plugs that you want to do?
Oh, I was going to say, firstly, this has been a great experience. I've loved talking with you, Britt. It's been amazing. I think that the last thing I want to say is that reading is I think for me, the best way just to get in contact with the rest of the world. Let's take up literacy again, especially in a time where some evil people are trying to restrict what people read. I think reading what you want to, again, is another revolutionary act. So yeah, let's keep reading, kids, folks. Everyone, let's keep reading.
I love that. Keep on reading, folks. This has been Bookwise, a podcast from bookclub.com. Thanks for listening.